Welcome to 2 Hours No Traffic, a New York, Philadelphia sports podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Spen Harris. He's Philly Brandon. And Brandon, what do our basketball teams have in common? They're both in the playoffs.
What do they not have in common? One team didn't have to play in to get there.
There's another side to that. The Nets needed that momentum to win a play-in game against a quality opponent in Cleveland. So now they have momentum.
Oh, please.
I'll tell you this, man. Boston fans, I want to say they're shaking in their boots, but in reality, I've talked to a lot of people in that state and in the New England area, and they're fairly confident that they can beat the Nets in 6 games.
I don't disagree. I mean, Boston's a scary, good basketball team. You guys got an easy play-in draw, which goes to play-in. But this isn't a team I would want to face. Sixers, Nets, anybody. I think Boston's a dangerous team in the playoffs. You have who's probably going to be Defensive Player of the Year, Marcus Smart. Jason Tatum, for whatever the reason, turns into Kobe Bryant during the playoffs. And, I mean, if you get what Jaylen Brown's capable of, I mean, they can go punch for punch with Brooklyn, which is kind of concerning for you guys because it doesn't get too deep after those top two.
I get it. Celtics fans are also probably betting that Kyrie is off because he tends to not play great against the Celtics, at least this year. The Celtics have also had the Nets number this year. I believe they're either 2-1 or 3-1 against us, but they've won the season series pretty handedly. I actually went to a game where they beat us by 30. They're not a bad team, the Celtics. I mean, they're a lot better than last year. They have a new coach. He's instilled new values. They're a different team. They're more physical. Marcus Smart seems to be having one of his best years as a Celtic. I get all that. But at the end of the day, I still take KD and Kyrie and that duo over Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Now, where I think the Celtics might have us is I think they're role players and the rest of their team is slightly more filled out than the Nets. I would argue that Marcus Smart is probably a better third option than Bruce Brown right now, and Bruce Brown has been our third leading scorer, especially in that play-in game. But we'll talk a little bit more about that series in depth in 2 seconds. I don't want to overlook the fact that the Nets at least won a play-in game to get to this moment. And that was a playoff atmosphere in Brooklyn on Wednesday. What's tonight? Tonight's Wednesday. So on Tuesday night, that was a playoff atmosphere. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, they did a great job of getting their teammates involved. And the reason I bring that up is because that's something that we're going to see throughout the playoffs. I mean, KD had 25 and 11. Kyrie had 34 and 12. And I'm talking about assists. But you look at guys like Bruce Brown, he chipped in 18, 9 rebounds, 8 assists for Bruce Brown, 16 points and 8 rebounds for the former Philadelphia 76er, Andre Drummond, who has come in and been absolutely huge for the Nets since that James Harden trade. Claxton had 13 points, 9 rebounds off the bench. Yeah?
Yeah, I knew he was going to be. Your guys, the biggest weakness and the easiest way to beat the Nets was you guys didn't have anybody in the middle. And all of a sudden, you have probably a top 5 center in the East. And then Nick Claxton, who, like you said, you can get nights where he's almost unplayable. And then you get nights like last night when, 13 and 9, which is, very good backup center minutes. But, I mean, when you said like a playoff atmosphere, and I get it, that's like the fans and that's, Brooklyn's back in the playoffs. Everyone's healthy this time. But was there ever a doubt in your mind that you weren't going to get through the Cleveland game? Like, come on.
There wasn't. And going in, I was a 7 out of 10 confident level that we would win that game, but you still have to play the game. You still have to deal with a Darius Garland, who's no joke. That dude can play. He's a really good player. You still have to deal with Evan Mobley and Rajon Rondo. Rondo's a solid backup point guard still. Kevin Love had 3 3-pointers in this game for 14 points. And Karis LeVert actually had a really bad game. I was sort of surprised by that. But, no, I'm not surprised that we won this game. We won pretty easily. I don't think we ever really trailed in this one. And just nice momentum going into that Celtics series. Now, regardless of how you feel about, whether you think the Celtics are going to win, the Nets are going to win, there are reports that Ben Simmons, I don't know if you remember him, Ben Simmons might make a return in this first-round series. So, Brandon, you've dealt with this before. 1, he doesn't show up. 10, he shows up. What's your confidence level that Ben Simmons will play in this first round?
I think he will play the equivalent of one game of basketball in this first round. So I think during the first round, he will log 48 minutes of on-court time.
Okay, so you're like a 10 that he plays.
I think he sees the floor, yeah, but I think it's very sparingly and at the end.
What's amazing about all this, so the report comes out, Shams Charania breaks in on the Pat McAfee show, which, by the way, I think is hilarious.
Dude, Pat McAfee's low-key killing it, but
killing it, man. So that happens, and then Steve Nash has a presser before last night's game, I think, and he basically says, I don't have any timetable on when Ben Simmons is coming back. It's like, one of you guys
he's done that
lying.
Before.
He's done it before, but it's just
the Nets,
so
though.
annoying.
It's always the Nets.
But why? Why do you feel the need to lie to our fan base?
That I don't know, but I mean, we've been down this road too many times to pretend that's anybody but Nets front office that's lying.
If I had one problem with Steve Nash, Sean Marks in the front office, it's that they don't tell you what's going on, and I think that's annoying as a fan because I think we have a right to know. We're invested in this team, not a right. I'm sorry, that sounded rather jerkish. I just think we should know. If I'm paying attention to every game, to every tweet, I'd like you guys to be straight with me. But it'll be a good series, Yeah.
I think even if Ben does play this series, especially with him having no time with the team really on court, I think he plays the first 3 quarters and you don't see Ben for a minute in the fourth. He's a weapon on defense, and I get that. But when the game tightens up, and with Boston, it will tighten up. They're going to play really great defense down the stretch. You can't have somebody who's not on the same page in the fourth quarter.
Well, no, I 100% agree with you. He's not going to see the floor enough to play big minutes in the fourth quarter. I mean, like you said, he's going to play very sparingly. He's going to see 10 to 15 minutes a night when he comes back. This dude hasn't played basketball in over a year and a half, like real basketball, live basketball.
About a year, because you got to figure playoffs last year is when he, quit.
No, you're right. And my point is that's exactly why, you can't play him more than 10 to 15 minutes. He's going to hurt himself again. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. God forbid he injures his feelings too. But
we're not going there right now.
No. Is Seth healthy again for you guys finally?
I mean, he played not great in that game against Cleveland. He missed a lot of shots. I think he ended up with zero points for Seth Curry, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. 0-4 from the field. He's hobbling a little bit. He's going to be a liability out there against Boston unless he's able to miraculously heal. It was weird. They did not get him involved in the game plan whatsoever. You had Kessler Edwards, who barely made the playoff roster, shooting threes with more confidence than Seth Curry. Like Seth Curry, just for some reason, I was getting mad because I tweeted, why is Kessler Edwards shooting 7 shots to Seth Curry's 4? And someone said that's because, Curry's got an ankle. I'm sorry. Edwards was 0-5 from the field and Curry ended up with 4. But regardless, I don't know the health of Seth Curry's ankle based off the Cleveland performance. It's not well. But I really hope, because we're going to need him against Boston. We're going to need his 3-point shooting against Boston. They're a much better team offensively than Cleveland is. And by the way, let's not get it twisted. Cleveland was playing without Jared Allen. If he plays, I don't know if Andre Drummond and Nick Claxton have those good of games. I said I was a 6 out of 10 confident level against Cleveland. I'm sorry, 7 out of 10 confident level against Cleveland. I am a 6 out of 10 confident level against the Celtics.
Really? I see. I think you're right on the Boston one. I just think the fact that you were so low on Cleveland makes it seem odd. Because Boston is head and shoulders more than a 1 percentage point better basketball team than Cleveland. I tend to lean. I think I'd agree with the 6 out of 10 because I can see you guys winning it. I would almost expect you to win it, but it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if Boston could win it in 6, and I wouldn't stand here flabbergasted. I can see that, because if they get hot, if Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are both hot together, they're a really hard team to deal with. And I'd feel a lot better if you had Seth healthy, because they're all that whole team is wings. Even their center, Al Horford's 6'9". The whole freaking team is wings. So if you don't have somebody who can stretch the floor and spread their wings out like Seth Curry, it gets really tough for your guys like KD, Kyrie, and especially Bruce Brown, who likes to slash.
You're absolutely right. The reason that I think I had the Cavs Nets game at a 7 out of 10 is because it's a do or die situation. I think the Nets role players are more likely to have duds in that situation. In a long 7-game series, I trust that the combination of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving will play better more times than not, and our role players will step up enough to get the job done. I don't know why I feel that. I just feel like the do or die scenario for the Nets. There have been a lot of games this year that were like do or die situations against Charlotte, against Atlanta that we needed to win that we just lost. So that's why that confidence level was low. But as much as I think the Celtics are dangerous, I just don't think they're built to beat the Nets. You know, the status of Robert Williams is uncertain, which means that Andre Drummond and Nick Claxton could have big series, between the two of them collectively. And Kyrie Irving is going to be motivated in this series, man. Like, he does not want to lose to the city that despises him. There's not a city who hates on Kyrie Irving more than the Celtics. All right. He won Cleveland a championship. I'm sure there are some Cavs fans who don't like him, but he won you a championship. Boston hates Kyrie Irving. And Boston fans are up there with Philly fans. You guys are both hardcore, and you both don't forget, and you rarely forgive. So it's going to be an interesting series. Did you see what Bruce Brown said about the Celtics after the game the other day, and Kevin Durant scolded him? Did you see that?
No, I don't follow enough of your media to get
So it was really funny. So after the game,
player commentary.
It's okay. I guess Bruce Brown was like riding high after that Cleveland win, and they asked him about the Celtics, and he goes, yeah, they don't have Robert Williams, so I think that Tyson and Grant Williams are going to be we're going to attack them. Like he almost implied that they're weak players, and Kevin Durant heard what he said, scolded him. He was like, dude, don't say that. And then in KD's presser, he was like, yeah, I don't know what people are saying. Like, Tyson and Williams are good players. Like, he basically like I don't know. I'm trying to think of he sunned Bruce Brown.
Yeah, he tried to fan the flames a little bit, and but that's someone who's been to the playoffs enough times. Like, he's seen these random dudes get hot just because people started talking down on him. Like, same thing with whole teams. Like, when you're like, oh, we're not worried about that, worried about a championship. Like, those are the teams that'll sneak up and get you. So KD's seen that move one too many times to fall for it again.
All right, I've gone on too
and
long
Bruce
about
Brown's
my
new to
Nets.
the playoffs.
Yeah, and last season, by the way, last playoffs, one might be able to blame Bruce Brown for that Milwaukee Bucks Game 3 loss. If we win that game, we go up 3-0. It's a different series. He had a really bad stretch in that fourth quarter last year, and he did not play well in that Bucks series. So, yeah, I don't know why he's talking out of pocket, but he had a good game. And he's a guy that he can make or break the Nets. If Bruce Brown's playing well, they're hard to beat.
You got to have him or Seth Curry get hot. You can't afford to not have either one of them.
All right, I've been going on about my Nets long enough. Let's get to your Sixers.
Yeah, this is the playoff of exercising demons. All Sixers fans know where they were, what they were doing, what time it was when Kawhi hit the fadeaway shot in the corner, bounced 4 times on the rim, a gust of wind blew through the front door of the stadium and sent it through. This is the time. Granted, that's not that same Raptors team. They're a lot weaker, in my opinion. But this is the time for Philly to exact their demons, get through it. And I'm not sure if they do. I'm really just not sure.
So
Joel Embiid's going to be
what's
huge.
Your confidence level?
Against the Raptors, 5.
You're crazy.
Like 5 out of 10.
Brandon. You're out of your mind.
Dude, the vibes around this team right now are in the basement. I mean, outside of Joel playing phenomenal, so is Tyrese Maxey. I don't know, the city and a couple of the players now are getting really frustrated with Doc. Our backup center being one of them. I'm not sure if you saw we're not throwing the Paul Reed parade.
I saw.
If you're a player, that's pissed. Horrible for morale in the locker room. Yeah, and I don't blame. The guy had 25 points, one player of the game, and he just shot him down for DeAndre Jordan. who I think is going to hurt us in the playoffs. The Raptors thrive on hustle, and DJ is about the slowest person in the NBA. And while we're at it, I mean, I didn't know which James Harden we're going to get because of that aforementioned hustle from Toronto. Like, if we get the James Harden that was here the first 2 weeks and was excited about basketball again, I think absolutely it's an 8, 9 out of 10 confidence level. But for some reason, that's not the one we've gotten the last 2 weeks. And it's the James Harden where it's like he's almost like a veteran presence. Like, he's not the superstar James Harden. And that's not going to fly against Toronto. Toronto beat us shorthanded 2 weeks ago without Fred VanVleet, and we were fully healthy.
I think it's wild. You're a 5 out of 10 on Toronto, and I'm going to tell you why. Toronto is an overachieving basketball team, okay? They're a regular season team. They're like the Memphis Grizzlies from a few years ago that would try very, very, very hard, get to the playoffs, and they'd be a first or second round exit. I'm talking the Mike Conley, Marc Gasol, Zach Randolph teams.
The grit and grind Grizzlies.
Yeah, and that's the Raptors. The Raptors are a grit and grind team. This Raptors team isn't as good as those Grizzlies teams. Siakam's been solid for them. He's pretty much their MVP. Sure, VanVleet's good. They got that guy Malachi Flynn, who's not bad. Who am I missing? Is there anybody else?
They have a really good 3-point shooter whose name is escaping me at the moment.
It's not OG Anunoby. Is he still there?
Shit, no, God, no, it's not. Let me fire up their roster real quick because he's worth mentioning because he torched us when we played in the regular season.
Mention his name. And the other thing I'm trying to
say is
Scotty
Barnes.
Oh, Scotty
Barnes and Gary Trent Jr.
Scotty Barnes has been their MVP this year. Him and Siakam, I would say, and he's been phenomenal. How can I forget about Scotty Barnes? I think this is a series that Joel Embiid can't be stopped in. I think the fact that he's the best player on the court, he's going to let it be known. And the thing is, you guys are so down on the Sixers right now, but if they get a sweep against the Raptors or they win in 5, and you guys go into what? You'd play Miami next, correct?
Yeah, which I love that matchup, honestly. Like that's not a bad path.
There you go. So that's my point. So you're playing a not great playoff built team in Toronto. You have home court advantage. You have the best player in the series. You do still have James Harden, who even when he's not playing great is probably better than the second best player on the Raptors. I just think that for you to be not as confident about your 76ers as I am about my Nets, it's just bizarre to me. You're a better team than the Raptors. You have, I wouldn't say better coach. You have good coaching. But if you're able to get past this series, if you're able to get past this series, then like you look forward to trying to beat Miami, who I think you're probably a better team than Miami.
We're a more talented team than Miami.
Yes.
Like there's no doubt this team has the high-end talent to deal with teams like yourself, like with the Celtics. Quite frankly, Chicago, depending on who they have. My concern is how that talent is managed, a.k.a. Glenn Rivers, and just the disjointedness you sometimes see when you're watching Sixers games. Like, we haven't even mentioned Tobias Harris, who I think can swing the series one way or another. I mean, if he has a great series, for me, would be averaging like 18 a game. I'm not worried at that point. But he disappears sometimes. He'll fade in and out of the offense. We're not going to have Matisse Thybulle in all Toronto games. He's far and away our best defender. If you watch this team at all, we're an awful defensive team now.
How do you feel about that, not having Thybulle for those road games against Toronto?
I think it's huge. It sucks.
Yeah.
He's a likable guy, but I mean, he has one shot. Like, say what you will about Kyrie, and I thought it was asinine the entire season. At least he was like, I'm not getting anything. The fact that Thybulle got one shot and then paused, it's even more baffling. And I don't know how we didn't find out until now. You might know a little bit more than me because we played Brooklyn, in Brooklyn. He could play there?
I guess he would
I was just completely blindsided.
I guess he would show his vaccination card. It would say one date, and I guess that was enough.
It might have been. Maybe they only required one shot, but I was just completely taken back by that. It's a bigger issue than people are making out to be. He's not a good offensive player. I fully get that. but this team is horrendous on defense. When you lose Ben Simmons, it sucks, and you see on the defensive end. When you lose Matisse too, we will not be able to defend Toronto on the wing. We just can't.
Isn't
Harden's
it
too slow.
ironic?
Niang's too slow. Green is too slow.
Isn't it ironic that the best defensive player on your team doesn't want to play defense against COVID-19?
Very funny.
I like
but
that one.
I mean, yeah, that's gonna hurt for sure. We don't have somebody who can pull off the bench and just be a defensive stopper. That guy's not on the roster.
It's a fair point. So you're a 5 out of 10. Damn. Okay.
I'm a 5, and it's not because of talent. Like, I'll know game one. I will know game one how confident I'm going to be, because if it seems like the energy's high, the vibes are high, and guys are just kind of playing with a purpose, I'll feel fine immediately. What scares me is Doc not having these guys ready, or Doc having a playbook that's not going to fit Toronto, and he will not change it. We've seen that too often during the season. He will not change his mind based on the tide. And I think if they go DeAndre Jordan against Toronto's small bigs, which he said he wouldn't do, but I don't believe him, I think we're going to get eaten alive inside on the offensive boards. When we played them in the regular season, we were minus 10 on the glass in the first quarter alone. And that's just not a good way to win playoff games.
Yeah, I love the
And before we get off the Sixers, I do want to get your take. I want to get your take on the Paul Reed thing, because I do find it interesting as a coach that, I mean, he's got this aura about him where he's like, I know more than everybody in the room, and he might. But when you're watching as a fan, even we can tell that Paul Reed is a better center option than DJ. And, when he comes out and belittles reporters, and I got guys that watch all this tape and watch all this, and we know more than you. I'm like, I get that, but you saw tonight. You put him in. He gave you 25 and 9 to his player of the game. DeAndre Jordan's never done that since he's gotten here. Like, don't overthink it, right?
Yeah, welcome to the DeAndre Jordan experience. It's not a fun one, and it always ends in misery. I'll tell you this. When he was with Brooklyn, it was so frustrating because he would start games over Jared Allen. That would happen every single night, and he would have a putrid start. The Nets would go down a bunch. You'd put in Jared Allen, and all of a sudden they'd make a run and they'd be good again. And I'm talking about the beginning of last season before the James Harden trade, and also the year before that, because even when KD and Kyrie weren't playing, you still had DeAndre Jordan starting over Jared Allen. It just doesn't make sense. At this point in his career, DeAndre Jordan's washed up. If the Sixers couldn't see that after his last two destinations with Brooklyn and Los Angeles, where he just wasn't a fit at all, defensively, he's not good because he's not quick on his feet. He can't switch. Offensively, he's a serious liability because his touch around the rim just isn't that great anymore, and he just can't get to spots. And I don't get it. Like, the whole thing with the coach having to be the smartest person in the room, why is it that when it doesn't positively affect your team? Like, it makes no sense to me. What does DeAndre Jordan have on the Nets and on the Sixers that they need to play him? It just, I don't get it. And the Lakers.
It's an obsession thing. Well, remember the last time that Doc coached him, DJ was first team All NBA back in 2016, which is mind-boggling now, I know. But I mean, when he and Chris Paul were together, he was first team center that year. And I don't know, and Doc has this weird affinity for veterans that he used to coach, and he can't see the fact that he's a third string center in the NBA right now at best. I'd argue not even on a contender. But while we're on the topic of centers and we're running rapidly out of time, no, go ahead, finish that one off.
No. I forgot what I was going to say, Brandon. So
your boy, Kevin Durant, has been leading the charge for the Embiid MVP push, admitting that he's not going to win it, but saying that he would have his vote. And the only reason he's not going to win it, according to Kevin Durant, who, by most accounts is the best player currently in the NBA, is because there's some vendetta against Embiid, Philly, where the media has fallen in love with Jokic and has just not have that same love for Embiid. I tend to agree. I don't care about people's Raptor scores or their VORP scores or whatever. I mean, if you watch the game of basketball, Embiid is more dominant than Nikola Jokic. He just is. I mean, Jokic last season had one of the best center seasons in history. I get that. He's regressed this year from that incredibly high, lofty peak, and Embiid should get it this year.
Yes, I agree with you. I agree with Kevin Durant. I think that the fact that Joel Embiid finished the regular season off really strong, like he had a few 40-point performances to end the season, a few dominating wins.
Three.
I think that really helped his case. And if he doesn't win it this year, I guess I'm trying to think of what's going against him. And what are you guys, the 3 seed or the 4 seed?
4 seed. Denver's a 6.
Denver's a 6. All right, there you go. So advantage Embiid. I didn't even realize Denver was that low. He should win it. The problem is people are addicted to stats when it comes to basketball, right? The triple-double is the sexiest stat in basketball. So they see Jokic, this big mammoth from Europe, slinging out assists, no-look passes. Obviously, offensively, he's got talent. He can finish around the rim. He's got a nice midi. He can hit the 3. They see all these plays, and they're almost like, Embiid's getting 35 a night. Isn't Embiid the first center to win the scoring title since someone from like 30 years ago? Was it Shaq? Okay, there you go.
The first one since Shaq, I think. Yeah.
Like, I guess the voters see that and they see what Jokic is doing and they just prefer Jokic because of the stats. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't think there's a vendetta against Philly. Like what is it? Conspiracy theory class? Like what are we doing here? There's no vendetta against Philly.
I think there is, and it's not because of the city itself. I think it's because of how Embiid was acquired. I think there's a tendency not to want to reward the process and tanking for a guy like Embiid.
Yeah, but that was 7-8 years ago. People aren't over that yet.
The NBA, I don't think, is. And remember, they installed like a regime into Philly to end the. It was an obsession, but I think you're right. I think it's more the other side. I think it's more the obsession with stats. I don't think you have a lot of basketball guys choosing these awards. You have a lot of stat nerds and fantasy basketball guys. Like the Ringer gets 4 votes. That's baloney in my opinion. Like, why does the Ringer get 4 votes?
Yeah, that is kind of sad. All right, we got to wrap this episode up. Any final words for the Philadelphia Phillies? How have they been playing as of the beginning of the season?
I will use my last 30 seconds on that. Phillies started off incredibly hot. Vibes were amazing. The stadium was full, and they are falling apart already. Aaron Nola forgot how to pitch. The lineup has collectively fallen apart. Bryce and Schwarber are combined 2 for 34 since opening day with 16 strikeouts. Nick Castellanos is a Philadelphia gem. Alec Boehm hates it here, but apologized. And we just lost the series to the New York Mets, and we head down to Miami. So that's 30 seconds encapsulating the Phillies season thus far.
Yuck, losing to the Mets stinks. Well, I'll give you some Yankees update. The Yankees are 3-2. Anthony Rizzo has been a really nice addition, already 6 ribbies in the first 5 games. Giancarlo Stanton has 2 homers, and Aaron Hicks is batting .308. Yankees with a few wins over their rival, the Red Sox, and then a few losses against the one loss against Toronto and 1 win against Toronto. So they had a really cool opening night. They beat the Sox in 11 innings. I was watching at my friend's bachelor party, and it was a dope win because we were watching with Boston people. Real fast, I'm getting married this weekend, so shout out to me. Congratulations to me. After this week, I'll
shout out marriage.
Shout out marriage. And enjoy the rest of the NBA playoffs. We'll give you guys our recap of the Nets and Sixers first few games next week. As always, thanks for listening to 2 hours, no traffic. Catch you next time.